Jnantirmirandasya Gyananjana Shalokaya Chaksharanmilitam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadam Hayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhabhevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bhutaya Mahatprema Puro Vibhur Nirma Ekshati Adamusha Purusha Bhungte Gunan Sadasa Sadasa Makailan Krishishta Bhagavan Vacham Sime Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So tonight we are reading second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita as it is, translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So text 20. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin Nayam bhutva bhavitavana bhuya Ajo nitya shashvatayam purano Nahanyate hannamane sharire. Synonyms: na, never. Jayate, takes birth. Mriyate, dies. Va, either. Kadachit, at any time. Past, present, or future. Na, never. Ayam, this. Bhutva, having come into being. Bhavita, will come to be. Va, or. Na, not. Bhuyaha, or is again coming to be. Ajaha, unborn. Nityaha, eternal. Shashvataha, permanent. Ayam, this. Puranaha, the oldest. Na, never. Hannate, is killed. Hanyamane, being killed. Sharire, the body. Translation: For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, and primeval. He is not slain, but the body is slain. Purport. Qualitatively, the small atomic fragmental part of the Supreme Spirit is one with the Supreme. He undergoes no changes like the body. Sometimes the soul is called the steady or kutastha. The body is subject to 6 kinds of transformations. It takes its birth from the womb of the mother's body, remains for some time, grows, produces some effects, gradually dwindles, and at last vanishes into oblivion. The soul, however, does not go through such changes. The soul is not born, but because he takes on a material body, the body takes its birth. The soul does not take birth there, and the soul does not die. Anything which has birth also has death, And because the soul has no birth, he therefore has no past, present, or future. He is eternal, ever-existing, and primeval. That is, there is no trace in history of his coming into being. Under the impression of the body, we seek the history of birth, etc. of the soul. The soul does not at any time become old as the body does. The so-called old man therefore feels himself to be in the same spirit as in his childhood or youth. The changes of the body do not affect the soul. The soul does not deteriorate like a tree, nor anything material. The soul has no byproducts either. The byproducts of the body, namely children, are also different individual souls, and owing to the body, they appear as children of a particular man. The body develops because of the soul's presence, but the soul has neither offshoots nor change. Therefore, the soul is free from the 6 changes of the body. In the Katha Upanishad 1-18, we also find a similar passage which reads, Najayate mriyate vavipaschin nayam kutaschin na babhuva kaschit ajo nitya shashadayam purano na hanyante hanyamane sharire. The meaning and purport of this verse is the same as in the Bhagavad-Gita, but here in this verse there is one special word, vipaschit, which means learned or with knowledge. The soul is full of knowledge or full always with consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the symptom of the soul. Even if one does not find the soul within the heart, where he is situated, one can still understand the presence of the soul simply by the presence of consciousness. Sometimes we do not find the sun in the sky owing to clouds or for some other reason, but the light of the sun is always there, and we are convinced that it is there for daytime. As soon as there is a little light in the sky early in the morning, we can understand that the sun is in the sky. Similarly, since there is some consciousness in all bodies, whether man or animal, we can understand the presence of the soul. This consciousness of the soul is, however, different from the consciousness of the Supreme, because the Supreme Consciousness is all knowledge, past, present, and future. The consciousness of the individual soul is prone to be forgetful. When he is forgetful of his real nature, he obtains education and enlightenment from the superior lessons of Krishna. But Krishna is not like the forgetful soul. If so, Krishna's teachings of Bhagavad-Gita would be useless. There are 2 kinds of souls, namely the minute particle soul, Anu-Atma, and the super soul, Vipo-Atma. This is also confirmed in the Katha Upanishad 1-20 in this way. Anoraniyan mahatamahiyan atmasya janto nihito guhyamam tam akratu pashyati vitta shoko dhatu prasadan mahimanumatmanam. Both the super soul Paramatma and the atomic soul Jivatma are situated on the same tree of the body, within the same heart of the living being, and only one who has become free from all material desires, as well as lamentations, can, by the grace of the Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. Krishna is the fountainhead of the super soul also, as it will be disclosed in the following chapters, and Arjuna is the atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, he requires to be enlightened by Krishna or by his bona fide representative, the spiritual master. I think everyone who wanted to come to the class, they're already here, so if we could shut the doors to prevent the noise coming in, otherwise it can be quite a distraction. Thank you. So we'll read this verse one more time. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavitavanuya ajonitya shashvatayam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So this is one of the verses in the series of verses explaining the nature of the soul. And Bhagavad-Gita is very clear that soul is eternal. And this knowledge was also present in other scriptures of the world. Unfortunately, it has been removed conscientiously. At least in Christianity, it has been removed by the voting. All the parts of the scripture which spoke about the eternality of the soul were removed because it prevented from politically influencing people into kind of having firm allegiance to the church, because it's like if you live only one life and that's it, right? You have no choice. Well, they kind of try to make people surrender in this way. But if you live many lifetimes, you can think, okay, in this lifetime I couldn't make it, so maybe I can try next one. Something like that. But still there are passages even now, despite of all the effort, there are passages in Bible as well as Quran which actually confirm the reincarnation. And it's of course, simple common sense, because every scripture speaks about that we are eternal. We're not dying with the body. We're supposed to be going somewhere. And if we are eternal, so natural question, where have we lived before this lifetime? Where have we been? Where we came from? And so we lived before, we live now, and we're going to be living in the future as well. We'll never die. And Srila Prabhupada makes very interesting point in the Nectar of Devotion. He says that hardly anyone can take up to devotional service if we haven't had this experience in the past, in our past lives. So devotional service means continuing from the past life. There are very few exceptions, special mercy of Krishna or his pure devotee. But mostly we are continuing from our past lives. And whatever is happening with us in this life is just continuation of the past life. And there is no other logical explanation of, for example, prodigy children, those who have exceptional abilities. Some children from their birth, they can play musical instruments, they can paint, they can do so many amazing things. And Srila Prabhupada came into one community and he saw a little child, literally maybe 2 or 3 years old child, playing kartals with extreme expertise, very expert. And he pointed at this and he said, there is no chance of this child playing so nicely in such a young age if he haven't played in his past life. And I'm sure we've seen the kind of children of the devotees who know how to do everything without much training or without much of the parents telling them. Anyone has seen this kind of children? So it's pretty common. So where from these abilities or qualities coming from? Naturally, it's coming from the past life. And thinking about ourselves, we can understand that to the largest degree, all of us are here because we've been practicing Krishna consciousness before in the past life. And pretty much there are only, before Prabhupada came to the West in 65, there was only one option of practicing Krishna consciousness in our past life. And that was here in India, right? And of course, since Prabhupada came, now we also have children who's been practicing Krishna consciousness in ISKCON in their past lives. And so somehow they never made it, so they are continuing in this lifetime. And sometimes some devotees, they know for sure that they come from India in their past life. Anyone? Incidentally, anyone kind of remembers, of course, those of you who are from non-Indian backgrounds, anyone remembers your past life in India? Anyone has any?
You do?
Yeah, I do. I know quite a few devotees who remember their past lives being in India. And so it's quite interesting how it's happening that we know that majority of Indians are, kind of fascinated by the West. They think West is, all the streets are paved with gold, and they use, gemstones for instead of lamps or something like that. So it's kind of a dreamland, right, for most Indians. And when they come to the West, they actually learn what kind of dreamland is that. Interesting. I met one devotee, and he went to America. Of course, all the as Western countries, America is the most fascinating place for Indians, especially. And he's doing his service in the temple, but he's a family man, and he has to do something to support his family as well. So he's serving in America for a few years. And when I met him, and we knew each other from India, and I asked him, "How are you doing?" He said, "No, I'm just waiting for the chance to go back to India. I don't like it here." And I asked him, "What's your realization?" He said, "My realization is simple." And he is a Bengali, by the way. And he said, in India, in a family of 5 people, 1 person is working, and 4 are eating very nicely, and everyone is happy. In America, 5 people are working, all 5 members of family working, nobody is happy. So he said, "I don't like it here." So he has his realization. And so, and this is a devotee, right? So, and we can understand that those who probably never made it to the Western countries, of Indians, but had this desire, I want to live in the West. And so Krishna fulfills that desire. And they take birth in the Western country, and then they realize what they've lost. and then naturally, when they come up across Krishna consciousness, they happily taking it up. Otherwise, how is it possible to explain that Western people, I mean, because Krishna consciousness is quite a serious commitment, right? It's not just a philosophy or little bit of the spiritual practices. It's the entire lifestyle change, radical. And how can we explain what's the other possible explanation that Western people are taking up pretty much Indian lifestyle as if it is nothing special, as if it's supposed to be like this. So yeah, the only explanation is that yes, this is something they've done before. This is something they used to practice, and so, and I heard many devotees commenting or, sharing that when they first time came to India, they felt as if coming back home. Any of you had this experience when you first came to India for the first time? You felt like you were coming back home? So yeah, that's another proof that it is actually true. You are actually coming back home. And so, yes, of course, this is not our original home. I mean, Vrindavan is our original home, but India is not necessarily our original home. Our original home is the spiritual world, where there is no birth or death or disease or old age. And this is where we all belong to. And luckily we have this knowledge which is helping us to go back to our original home, to the spiritual world, and resume our original identity, which is Satchidananda, eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. And that's another proof that we're not the body but the soul, immortal soul, because everybody dies, but nobody wants to die. If death would be so natural, why people would be so much worried about death, right? And nobody knows everything, but everybody wants to know everything. And nobody is really happy, but everybody wants to be happy. So where these are three kind of unnatural desires, right? These are three things which we don't see in this world. Nobody is eternal, nobody is all-cognizant, and nobody is happy. And yet everybody wants to be eternal, all-cognizant, and happy. So, because this is the nature of the soul. How could we ever want something we never had experience of and never actually seen in this lifetime? So, but everybody wants these three things. Not just one, but whole three things. And it's quite amazing because, we are the soul, and death is something we don't even believe in. Spontaneously, we just feel that, okay, we'll just leave and nothing will happen to us. And yet, death comes, and it comes as a big shock because it's so unnatural for the soul. It's quite interesting that what Mahabharata says, what Yudhishthira Maharaj says, Ahanya Hani Bhutani, that everybody dies, but everybody lives as if they never planned to die. And it's very interesting that it actually does happen in reality. I was giving one public lecture, and there were quite a few new people there. And I was just making this point that human life is really rare, and it can be lost at any moment, and that's why the purpose of human life is not to live like animals, but actually to pursue spiritual advancement. And there was one man at the front row, and he was listening, and he had this kind of sarcastic expression on his face, and he was obviously, like not very serious about the subject matter. And it's quite disturbing if someone sits right in front of you and he's like very dismissive of what you are saying, right? So I actually asked him that you seem to be pretty, kind of skeptical about what we are talking, what we are discussing, and we are discussing possibility of death, so do you think you will not die? And he said, of course I will die. But why do we have to ponder on this point? Oh, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. What's so special about it? And I said, okay, so you're not worried about death? He said, of course I don't. It's nothing extraordinary. I said, yeah, of course you're not worried about death because you think you will die maybe 30, 40, 50 years from now, right? And he said, wherever, doesn't matter. I said, okay, but what if I would tell you that instead of dying in 30 or 40 years from now, you would die next Thursday, 3:17 in the afternoon? And it was very interesting when I was telling him about it. His expression changed, and he kind of looked very worried, and he became even pale, and he looked around, and he said, but how do you know? And everyone started laughing. And then he realized, that something's wrong. And I told him, you don't have to worry, but you can imagine, the person comes for the first time and he sees this strange guy with shaved head, with robes, and with some kind of strange clay mark on his forehead. And he's kind of telling his future or something, foretelling the future maybe. So he got worried. I said, I'm not, predicting that you're gonna die. I just gave that as a hypothetical example, but look at your reaction. Now it's totally different, but yeah, we can understand that anyone can be, very brave, theoretically, okay, let the death come, I'm not worried. But if someone gets the gunpoint at the forehead, then probably the, reaction will be totally different. So, yeah, death is really a natural thing because we are eternal spirit soul. And that's why it's very interesting that what is love in this world, right? Like a classical example of man loves a woman. But then if you ask the man, what do you love about the woman? He might say, oh, her eyes or something, whatever. But then basically her body, right? But then if the same woman dies in his hands of a heart attack or something, then he will completely lose interest in the body. He will try to get rid of the body, right? Bury it or burn it or whatever. Why? Because it's not the body which attracted him in the first place. And it's quite amazing that the soul, a minute spark of life, is making this, body. What is the body? It's just a bag of bones, basically speaking, right? making this bag of bones to be so attractive. And so, of course, there are many things we can discuss in this regard, but it's very interesting what Srila Prabhupada speaks in relation to this verse. And he gave a class on this verse a couple of times. And he explains that we are immortal and we are eternal, same like Krishna, because qualitatively we are the same, and yet quantitatively we are different from Krishna. And so it's interesting that he oftentimes speaks about it, that even though we are like Krishna in many ways, but we are not Krishna. And he gave very nice statement one time. He said, Krishna is God and you are not. So there are two most important things to understand in life. One is that there is God, but the next point is that we're not Him. And it can be quite surprising why Srila Prabhupada kind of highlights this point so many times, especially speaking about Mayavadis, that they promote this philosophy that God or man can become God, but man can never become God. Because this is why we come to this world, and this is what keeps us from resuming our original spiritual nature, trying to imitate God. And it's quite interesting that even religious affiliation does not help one to get rid of that illusion that I am God. Because sometimes people can claim whatever religious affiliation they want, but by their behavior they try to impress upon the others that they are gods. For example, God is infallible and all his statements are absolute, right? And so if someone makes statements and claims that those statements are absolute, what can we understand from that? You ever came across these kind of examples? That you're talking to someone who expects you to take his or her statements as absolute and never doubt a word. Anyone had this experience? Talking to this kind of people? Anyone had this kind of experience among, dealing with ISKCON devotees? Unfortunately, it's there. And so, there are many other things. And so, basically, we can understand that we're dealing with one specific quality of the conditioned soul, and that is pride. And and unfortunately that quality, even though it's clearly demoniac quality, but it's really hard to get rid of it. And this is what keeps us from spiritual advancement. And this is my conclusion, that this is why Srila Prabhupada highlights this point so many times, that we're not gods, we're just God's servants. And spirit soul means certain qualities, and these qualities are, of course, we're talking about eternity, knowledge and bliss, But these are very basic three qualities. Like you have three colors in this world, and all the variety of colors are created from these three. So actually, Krishna has unlimited qualities, and because we are parts and parcels of Krishna, spiritually we also have unlimited qualities. And there are many places in scriptures, like Chaitanya Charitamrita describes 26 qualities of Vaishnava, and Bhagavad-Gita gives a list of about maybe 30. I mean, certain qualities are repeated, and acharyas are saying Krishna is in such an ecstasy describing his devotees that he repeats the same qualities. But it's about 30 qualities of someone who is very dear to Krishna, so we can understand that these are the qualities of the spirit soul, which are reflection of Krishna's qualities. And Nectar of Devotion says the same thing, that Krishna has 64 qualities, at least 64, and then perfect living beings can develop about 50 out of these 64 qualities. And so, and this is what spiritual advancement means, actually. This is what it means to become a devotee, to develop those qualities. And those qualities are quite attractive, and there are certain conditions under which those qualities can be developed. And the basic condition is sadhu sangha, in the association of the devotees who have those qualities. We can develop such qualities. Of course, the best example is Srila Prabhupada, because he had so many attractive qualities. And we can see in his disciples, they are reflecting Srila Prabhupada's qualities, which they gained through association and service. And Srila Prabhupada was consciously helping devotees. I mean, for him it was natural. He was helping devotees to develop those qualities. And this is what we call spiritual advancement. We define someone as advanced spiritually if someone develops spiritual qualities, qualities of the soul. There are many things to discuss on the basis of this verse, but let's see if anyone has any comments, questions, corrections, complaints. Prabhu.
You were giving the example of a devotee going to the West. I was in Bombay, there was one devotee who went to the West. Almost 25 years in the West. Every time he comes, he said, now I will come back, I will come back. So 25 years has gone. He purchased property in Bombay, he purchased property in Vrindavan, purchased property in this village, but still not satisfied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was a brahmachari.
Yeah.
And you are brahmachari, why you want so many things? One house is sufficient, you have 3 houses here in Vrindavan, one house in Bombay, and then in the village. What you will do all these things? No, Prabhu, I have this commitment, I have this commitment, this commitment. Commitment, you are not supposed to commit, you are devotee, you should forget all those things and come. We were inspired, you are doing pujari, doing nice arti, and this one, you are inspired from you, you are inspiring us. Now you have gone, and you are still in brahmachari, this one, almost you are more than 55, 60 years old, but still cannot give up. understand how the devotees, once their mentality is changed, they run after money. And some of them, you get example, one is person is tired of working in America, he want to come to India. And one person is gone, he doesn't want to come to India. He says that everything is okay, I will come for some time, 1 month, 2 months I'll come and then I'll go and start beginning. So what do you say about that person? What do you say such type of person?
Well, whatever desires one has, Krishna is fulfilling those desires. And yeah, I mean, if one will still maintain these desires, one will have to take birth. Again, that's the reality. It's like that story about a Brahmana and Narada Muni, who was inviting him to the spiritual world, and Brahmana was saying, yes, 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 let me go. But when Narada Muni was actually coming, he was saying, just wait for a few more years, I'll finish this and that business. And then it never happened, right? So, and we can understand that Brahmana was a devotee, that he was very attached. So attachments, yeah, that's what's keeping us in this material world, unfortunately. And yeah, Krishna consciousness means you have to become completely convinced that there is nothing which can make me happy in here. There is nothing to look forward to in this world. Prabhupada says one can be enthusiastic about Krishna consciousness only if one becomes very pessimistic. Oh no, he says one can be very optimistic about Krishna consciousness only when one will become very pessimistic about any type of the prospects in the material life. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
So does that mean that devotee, say it's a devotee, still has those material desires, and he tries to fulfill it, so because they say, well, we don't want to take birth again. But then maybe after he fulfills it, he's not still not satisfied, and it keeps going on. But still, he can take it into his next life.
Yes. Yeah, material desires, this is what keeps us in this world. And yeah, that actually Srila Prabhupada made comment one time. He said, some of my disciples, they are aspiring for heavenly planets. They are not aspiring for the spiritual world because they still have material desires. And heavenly planets are very problematic place. Because, well, one thing, I mean, we're just reading the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and so many problems described in there which actually happen on heavenly planets. Someone can curse you, something can happen, so many things, and very regular occurrence on heavenly planets. Of course, 8th canto, like Gajendra, that he was also a heavenly elephant, and there was a heavenly crocodile who caught him on his leg. So, padam yad vipadam, that there are dangers at every step in this world, including heavenly planets. And the worst thing on heaven is that regularly demons are attacking heavenly planets. And you can imagine this kind of situation, and actually it's described in Bhagavatam and other Puranas pretty graphically, that all the demigods are enjoying and they're having great time, and suddenly the demons are attacking and they start chopping them and piercing them and killing them. And it's a big mess. I mean, you can imagine yourself, relaxing at some beach, lying down, and you have your fruits here, you have your whatever drinks there, and the sun is shining nicely, and the sky is blue, and suddenly some terrorists come and they start shooting and killing. And so that heaven turns into hell in no time.
Or tsunami.
Huh?
Or tsunami.
Yeah, something. And so this, but we gave an example of terrorists because demons are like terrorists, right? And so they attack these heavenly planets very regularly. And I can imagine, if you are prepared for the attack, it's not so painful. But when you are relaxing and you are at the, peak of your enjoyment, and then suddenly these things are happening, it's so painful. So much misery is there, so why would anyone want to get stuck in there? And so, but less intelligent people, they think, okay, the heavenly planets are not so bad after all. Yes.
Now you were mentioning about you practicing Krishna consciousness means we've had some Krishna consciousness in our previous life, but there's also a statement, I can't remember the exact statement, but Prabhupada mentions where only once you've stopped all your sinful activities, you can take up to Krishna consciousness. So can you elaborate on that? What does Prabhupada mean by sinful activities when we stop the sinful activities?
Yeah, this is Bhagavad-Gita 7:28. Yesham tvantagatam papam janana punya karmanam tedvanva moha nirmuktam bhajante mam dridavrata. That only if someone is completely only someone who completely stopped all sinful activities and dedicated himself to punya karma, to pious activities, becomes free from dvandva, duality, and moha, illusions, and then only such people can completely dedicate themselves to the devotional service with determination. Bhajante mam dridavrata. And so it's Srila Prabhupada spoke about it quite often, and one time one disciple, Western disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he said, you are saying that only most pious people can take up to Krishna consciousness. I'm reflecting on my life, and I don't remember doing any pious activities at all. I've done nothing good in my life before I joined Krishna consciousness. So how come I'm practicing now? And Prabhupada smiled and he said, I've created your pious activities. I've given you piety. And it's not any kind of mystical process, because pure devotee, he is chanting and he's giving prasadam and he's giving spiritual knowledge. So through all these things, people get piety even without understanding that they become pious. And and it's called bhakti unmukha sukriti, spiritual activities which give one's piety, spiritual piety. And it's called agyata sukriti because people don't understand that all these activities, they lead to Krishna consciousness, but at some point they understand that they have to become Krishna conscious. So, in terms of a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, that's causeless mercy. And it is quite possible that someone might not even had experience of Krishna consciousness, but because he or she comes across the pure devotee, then they become eligible to practice, because by his association they develop spiritual piety, which makes them interested in Krishna consciousness. For myself, I can tell you that the first time I heard about the devotees and kind of, lifestyle devotees lead, my first thought was, no matter what I'll be doing in this lifetime, I could be doing so many things, but one thing will never happen to me for sure. I'll never be like these guys. Right? I'll never become a Hare Krishna. So, it's like they say never. And yeah, I mean, later, I wondered sometimes what happened to me. How come that I became a Hare Krishna? But yeah, this is what it is. Prasadam, holy name, devotee association, Prabhupada's books. Even without people's knowledge, all these things, they create piety. And when this amount of this piety accumulates, then from unconscious it turns into conscious piety. Then one realizes, okay, I have to practice Krishna consciousness now on my own. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
Why is it so hard to give up material desires?
Why is it so hard to give up material desires? Well, there are a couple of reasons, and one is explained in 259. That is Rasa Varjam Rasa Pyasya Param Drištva Nivartate. Actually, this verse is exactly speaking about this subject, that the conditioned soul can abstain from sense gratification artificially, but the desire is still there. You know, we might follow certain things in our life because we maybe understand, okay, this is not good for me, so let me restrict myself from doing this activity, right? But the desire is still there, right? So it's kind of artificial abstinence, and or artificial restriction. But then rasa varjam rasopyasya param drištva nivartate, that when we develop higher taste, then the lower taste kind of goes away. So it's very similar to, say, like there is a beggar on the street, and you can tell him, you know, it's really not good for you to eat kind of low quality food because it's dangerous for your health, this and that. So he might take it seriously and he might fast for a day or two. But then because he has no other option, right? So he will again, you know, go and eat something which is low quality or whatever. But if you provide him with opportunity to make his livelihood properly and, you know, increase the quality of his life, then naturally he will not go for something which is of a lower quality. So in the same way, we're trying to gratify ourselves in with certain things. We understand these things are not good for us, maybe even dangerous, but because there is no other source of pleasure, we still hanker for these things. But then if we have higher taste, then automatically this lower taste ceases to exist. And so, yeah, what Krishna consciousness is, it is always better alternative or higher taste. And what is the highest enjoyment in this world or in any world? Was that, you know, what is something which makes us happy? Yeah, love, right? Love is what makes the world go around, as they say. Yeah, for the sake of love, people can do completely crazy things. And so, because we don't have real love, we try for, what do you call it, surrogate love, artificial love. And how do we get real love? By associating with those who have it. How do we get love for Krishna? By associating with those who have love for Krishna. And I'm saying that there are only two things in life, two directions to go. We are either inspired in Krishna consciousness or expired. Right? And so, because you can see the list of these 6 items which nourish bhakti, which are given in Nectar of Instruction, Utsahan Nishchaya Dharyat, Tat Tat Karma Pravartanat. And so the first one is Utsahan. Utsaha means enthusiasm or inspiration. So we need that higher taste. We need that inspiration. Otherwise, if we're not inspired in Krishna consciousness, then we are expired, right? Then we will be going down. And Prabhupada was mentioning that Krishna consciousness, or God consciousness at least, is not limited to one religious denomination, because Krishna is everybody's God. And he was appreciating other spiritual paths and other spiritual practitioners. And he regularly had interfaith meetings. And it's very interesting that sometimes we can learn certain things from other traditions as well. And I had this experience for myself because I'm also involved in these things. And there is one Christian group, and they are very open, very friendly to the devotees, and so many devotees kind of associating with them. And they're also vegetarians and following or encouraging them to follow all the regulative principles. And their leader is very kind of charismatic, and it is in Los Angeles, and even many Prabhupada disciples, they go to kind of get some inspiration from him. I went to few of their meetings, and one time I was thinking, what is their secret? Why can they inspire people so much? What is it that inspires people? And then I took one of their formulas, I looked at it, and I realized that they are encouraging people to associate with each other on a purely spiritual level. And that really creates huge difference in interaction and in everything. And I've introduced that to few communities of the devotees around the world, and they all said the same thing, that we should have the same kind of interaction with each other. And if we look at Prabhupada's example, this is how he was interacting with the devotees. And this is why there are so many devotees who share those experiences. I mean, these kind of exchanges with Srila Prabhupada, they keep them going in Krishna consciousness with full enthusiasm for decades, even after his physical departure. So yeah, this is really the most valuable thing in the world. Associating with those devotees who can inspire you in Krishna consciousness. Yeah.
And how you attained Krishna consciousness?
Wow.
One more question. Who motivated you to attain the highest order of life?
Well, second question is easier. That is my spiritual master. But the first one is quite... as I've mentioned, I was not so interested in Krishna consciousness in the beginning, but I believed in God. And one thing was that I couldn't get a clear understanding of who is God and what's our relationship with Him, and why bad things happen to good people, and many other questions I had, which I couldn't find any answer to them. And even the questions, what is the soul and what is this world? Bible, Quran, or any other scripture, they don't give any proper answer to those questions. But only when I came across Bhagavad-Gita, I was living in communist Russia, and all spiritual knowledge was totally illegal at the time. I was interested in yoga. I heard something about reincarnation, but I could never find out any books which would explain these subjects. And only when I heard about the devotees from my friend, and he said they have very interesting spiritual books on yoga and other subjects. And I requested him to bring me a book. He brought me some small book. And this book was really interesting, and it was referring to Bhagavad-Gita all the time. So I realized Bhagavad-Gita is the main book. So I asked him if he could get me Bhagavad-Gita, and he said, well, this is very dangerous, because if anyone would see us with this book, we can both go to jail for many years. So somehow I convinced him just to bring me Bhagavad-Gita and show it to me. So he brought me one copy, which was illegally printed at the time. And when I looked at Bhagavad-Gita, I realized this was the book I was always looking for. And I said, can I borrow this book of you and then give it back to you? He said, no, that's very dangerous, I cannot do that. I told him, let me pay you money if you are doubtful. And he said, no, that, I don't want to go to jail even for money. So I cannot give this book to you. No matter how much I begged him, he didn't agree, and he took it back and never brought it back. And I think for nearly 3 years, I was looking for Bhagavad-Gita, Prabhupada's Bhagavad-Gita, and I could never find, because nobody knew. These books, they were not available in the shops, and devotees were, to the most part, in jail, and if they were not in jail, they were like underground, and there was no chance to even find any information about them. And after I completely lost hope that I will ever find Bhagavad-Gita, I was going along the street, and one man approached me and he said, "I have some spiritual books if you're interested." And I immediately felt he must have Bhagavad-Gita. And this was the first book he pulled out. And I said, "This is the book I was looking for, and so I can pay you anything you want to have this book." And he quoted some ridiculous cheap price. I was thinking, he is mad. He wants to, like, give away this, invaluable book for nothing. I had no idea about book distribution back then. And so after I got Bhagavad-Gita, I was just reading it all the time and kind of spontaneously bringing my friends together and reading Bhagavad-Gita to them. Some were appreciating, some were very upset. Have lost my friend very quickly because he was working very, very hard because he wanted to immigrate to Israel. He was Jewish. And I happened to read to him the passage of Prabhupada's purport wherein he was saying that, those who work hard, they are like donkeys. And so you can imagine. I was reading this passage to him, expecting him to become like inspired or something. And then after I finished reading, he was like so angry at me. He said, "So your book is saying I'm a donkey? I don't want to, I don't want to deal with you, and I don't want to know your book, and I don't want to know you also." So I lost him straight away. Anyway, other people were interested. So things like that were happening, but the rest is history. It all started with Bhagavad-Gita. Actually, even before that, it started with the Hare Krishna mantra, but that's a different story. It all started with the holy name. Then Bhagavad-Gita came in picture, and then, of course, devotee association. Hare Krishna. All right, so I think we should finish here. Thank you all very much. Yeah? Last one.
You were mentioning about how you went to this Christian thing, and you were inspired by seeing how they were associating on a spiritual platform, and you tried to implement it in some communities. So what does it mean to associate on a spiritual platform?
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I could give you a little glimpse of that. Of course, they kind of create facility in which it really is kind of mind-blowing. I mean, I told about it to one Prabhupada disciple. He came to their program, and just this introduction, he said, brought tears to my eyes. And we're talking about someone who is practicing Krishna consciousness since 60s and had direct Prabhupada's association and everything, and even that. Actually, his comment made me think, okay, that's pretty powerful. If a devotee of this level appreciates that to such an extent. And then I kind of wrote down their formula and shared it with devotees. But the simplest thing is to try it on each other. It takes a couple of minutes. You want to try it out? Yeah? Everyone wants to try it out? Make it not theoretical, because it's interesting. Prabhupada speaks in one purport that no matter how many lectures we listen on the science of the soul, that itself will never make us realize that we are the soul. So, tons of theories can never help us. But a little practice can actually help us to understand what we're talking about. So, what I suggest is that you try it in pairs, like you can just sit facing each other and repeat few words after me, and then we'll see if that had any effect. Yeah? So you want to do that? Okay. And so this is a kind of introduction, so pretend that you're welcoming each other to Vrindavan. Right. Welcoming each other is not a bad thing. Okay, so just look at each other and tell each other Hare Krishna. Welcome to Vrindavan. I recognize you. I see who you truly are. You are the spiritual image in the very likeness of Krishna, a unique emanation of beauty, love, and divine intelligence. Indeed, you are one of a kind wonderful, of a kind magnificent, brilliant, unfolding genius. And today, we will get to celebrate your very existence. We are celebrating your infinite potential. We appreciate you, and we thank Krishna for you. Welcome to Vrindavan. Hare Krishna. All right, how was it? Huh?
More personal.
More personal. It's quite interesting, right? Yeah. We forget that we are not alone in ISKCON. And sometimes it's like everyone's focused on Krishna, but who is standing on the right and left, it doesn't really matter, right? These are all passengers on the same train, but I don't know if they go to the same destination, they might get off. I don't care. It's me and Krishna, and that's it, right? And nothing else matters. But how this kind of consciousness is defined in Prabhupada's books? Kanishta Adhikari, one who only focused on the deity, but never bothers about the devotees. And so it's very interesting that they're actually training their congregation to become madhyamas, to recognize other devotees and appreciate other devotees. And that what makes whole lot of difference, because, bunch of kanishtas, that leads nowhere, to be honest. You can have tons of kanishtas and have a complete standstill in spiritual practice. Hare Krishna. Grantarat Srimad Bhagavad-Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande.